the chains of the mind, how overthinking becomes the cage that feels like freedom. Have you ever been trapped in your own mind? Not in the poetic sense, but in the real, haunting, almost invisible way when your thoughts circle like vultures above a situation that doesn't even require your attention anymore. What if I told you that overthinking, which we often mistake as intelligence, is actually the most seductive form of self-sabotage? In this video, we're going to explore 5 profound signs that you're overthinking and why, if you don't stop now, you may never truly live. This isn't just about managing stress. It's about escaping a philosophical prison, a prison that you built with your own mind and only you can dismantle. Let's start by imagining this. You're walking alone at night. There's a fork in the road. One path is well lit, predictable, known. The other is dark, uncertain, and mysterious. You hesitate, calculating every possible outcome. The decision itself becomes agony. Time passes. You stay rooted in place. And here's the kicker: life doesn't wait. In trying to predict the future perfectly, you miss the present entirely. That's overthinking. It masquerades as wisdom, but it's rooted in fear of loss, failure, regret. And ironically, the very thing we do to avoid pain often creates it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
The first sign of overthinking is analysis paralysis, the inability to act because your mind is lost in hypotheticals. Picture this: you're offered an amazing opportunity, a job, a relationship, a chance to move. You think, what if it goes wrong? What if I'm not good enough? What if I regret this? But here's a deeper question: is certainty even possible in life? And think about it. Every action carries risk, but in trying to calculate the uncalculable, you surrender your agency. Philosophers from Kierkegaard to Nietzsche argued that freedom involves risk. That leap of faith isn't foolishness, it's courage. Overthinking robs you of this leap. It enslaves you to the illusion of control. I once met a man highly intelligent, cautious, and meticulous. He spent years planning his perfect life, but never started it. Always preparing, never living. He was like a soldier sharpening his sword while the battle raged and passed. And the tragic irony: his fear of making mistakes led him to the biggest one of all, inaction. Now ask yourself, are you sacrificing progress on the altar of perfection? Because if you are, understand this: time is merciless. And it will not stop for you to make the perfect decision. The second sign of overthinking is replaying conversations or events in your head, scenes looping endlessly, searching for hidden meanings, signs you missed, clues you should have caught. This stems from a desire to rewrite the past. But here's the truth: the past is a corpse. No amount of analysis can resurrect it. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." By obsessing over what if, and if only, we chain ourselves to a phantom world, one that no longer exists. Isn't it strange that we fear ghosts, yet willingly become haunted by our own memories? Let's dig deeper. Why do we obsess over the past? Because deep down we believe if we analyze it enough, we can undo the pain. We think, if I understand it fully, I can avoid future hurt. But can you? The only certainty is uncertainty. True wisdom is accepting that some things will never be explained, That closure is a myth we chase to avoid discomfort. And the solution? Learn to let go. Holding on too tightly to the past strangles the present. Imagine grasping sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through. Life is the same. Now let's move to the third sign, fear disguised as logic. Overthinkers often pride themselves on being rational. But are you really rational, or are you using logic to mask fear? Here's a challenge. Take any decision you're agonizing over and ask, am I analyzing this because I need to, or because I'm afraid to decide? Fear is clever. It wears a mask of caution, reason, sometimes even morality. It whispers, think it through, when what it really means is, don't move. Stay safe. But is safety always virtuous? Socrates taught that an unexamined life isn't worth living, but over-examination can be just as deadly. There's a fine line between reflection and rumination. The first empowers, the second entraps. When we hide behind logic, we refuse to confront the emotional core, the fear of failure, of judgment, of regret. But here's the paradox. The more we fear these things, the more likely we are to experience them. Why? Because we become passive. We avoid life instead of embracing it. Let me tell you a quick story. I once spent 3 hours deciding whether to send an email. 3 hours. Why? Fear of rejection. But I ran through every possible outcome, worded and reworded each line. And when I finally hit send, the response was simple, thanks. That's it. The world didn't collapse. No one judged me. The lesson? Most of the things we fear exist only in our heads. Overthinking creates monsters that reality can't match. The tragedy is, many people live with these monsters for years, feeding them with every delayed decision. The fourth sign is constant seeking of reassurance. You ask others for advice, validation, opinions, not to learn, but to soothe anxiety. Now, seeking wisdom is good, but there's a difference between learning and outsourcing your judgment. When you overthink, you don't trust yourself. You fear the consequences of being wrong. But let me ask you this, can you ever be truly right if you never decide for yourself? Living through others' opinions is living half a life. True freedom begins when you embrace responsibility for your choices, when you stop blaming fate, or others, or circumstances. Here's a brutal truth. No one can save you from the responsibility of being you. Not your parents, not your friends, not even philosophers. Every moment you delay action because you seek reassurance, you give up a piece of your autonomy. You become a puppet, pulled by the strings of others' judgments. But here's the kicker: those people. They're just as uncertain as you. We're all winging it. The only difference is, some accept this chaos and dance with it. Others try to choreograph the storm and fail. Finally, the fifth sign of overthinking is chronic dissatisfaction. You're never at peace. No matter what you decide, you wonder if it was the right choice. Happiness becomes a moving target, always just out of reach. Why? Because overthinking erodes contentment. It tells you there's always a better option. You could have done more. This isn't enough. But here's the truth. Satisfaction isn't found in the perfect decision. It's found in commitment, owning your choice and making the most of it. Let me give you a metaphor. Life is like chess, but the pieces are foggy and the board is shifting. You'll never have all the information. Sometimes you'll win, sometimes you'll lose. But the worst fate, never playing at all. Overthinking makes you a spectator in your own life. And spectators, no matter how wise, never change the game. Part with, you have to move, even if you stumble. Only then do you grow. Now ask yourself, what decisions have I postponed because I feared being wrong? How many moments have I lost to invisible fears? Time, once gone, never returns. Overthinking doesn't just waste time, it steals life. Here's the ultimate insight. Overthinking is the desire for control of outcomes, of pain, of regret. But life isn't about control. It's about engagement, participation, presence. You can either be a philosopher king who rules his mind or a slave shackled by doubts and illusions. The choice is yours. So here's a challenge today. Make one decision you've been delaying. Act. Step into the uncertainty. Because in doing so, you reclaim your life from the chains of overthinking. You escape the cage. And you begin truly to live. The Silent War Within, How Escaping Overthinking Awakens True Freedom and Power. Let's begin with a startling thought. What if overthinking isn't just a bad habit, but a spiritual crisis? A crisis of disconnection, not only from action, but from existence itself. When we overthink, we aren't simply stuck in mental loops, we are fleeing from reality, terrified to surrender ourselves to the raw immediacy of life. Overthinking is the ultimate evasion. It's the mind's rebellion against uncertainty, the heart's reluctance to feel, and the soul's resistance to surrender. But here's the revelation most never realize. Overthinking isn't a sign that we're thinking too much. It's a sign that we're feeling too little. We've replaced direct experience with analysis. We've substituted contact with caution. And in doing so, we've lost the one thing that makes life worth living: presence. Let's peel this apart. What does it feel like to truly live? Think of a moment when you were completely alive, when your thoughts stopped and something deeper took over. Maybe you were watching a sunset, laughing uncontrollably, taking a risk, or standing on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful. In those moments, the chatter of your mind faded. That's not an accident. That's what living feels like. Now contrast that with the feeling of overthinking: tense shoulders, restless nights, regret for things not done. One is rooted in being, the other in thinking. You see, thinking isn't the problem. It's thinking without action, thinking without feeling, thinking without living. The philosopher Martin Heidegger warned of this long ago: the danger of becoming a they self, lost in distractions, separated from authentic existence. Overthinking is one of modernity's most insidious distractions, because it feels like we're engaged, but we're actually disengaged. The real tragedy? Overthinking disconnects us from ourselves. The longer we analyze, the more foreign we become to our own desires. Have you ever noticed that the more you think about a choice, the more uncertain you feel about what you actually want? That's because overthinking drowns the voice of intuition. And here's a profound truth: intuition is not irrational, but it's the wisdom of the body, the experience of the soul, processed faster than the mind can comprehend. Intuition doesn't scream, it whispers. But overthinking shouts, and so we miss it. In the war between mind and intuition, the louder voice usually wins. But the louder voice is not the wiser one. Here's something philosophers don't say enough. Life is not a problem to solve. It's a mystery to experience. Descartes, in his famous Cogito ergo sum, said, "I think, therefore I am." But perhaps he was wrong, or at least incomplete. Maybe it's more accurate to say, "I feel, therefore I am." Or, "I act, therefore I am." Thought alone doesn't constitute existence. It describes existence. And when we fall into the trap of overthinking, we become spectators of our own lives, analyzing the game instead of playing it. What happens then? Life becomes conceptual, not experiential. We become theorists of happiness, not participants in it. Now let's ask a more uncomfortable question. Why do we overthink, really? The deepest answer may be this: because action requires courage, and overthinking gives us an excuse not to act. It is a way to avoid risk, and in doing so, avoid responsibility. If we never act, we can never fail. If we never speak, we can never be judged. If we never choose, we can never regret. But in avoiding failure, judgment, and regret, we also avoid growth. Here lies the existential crisis. Overthinking is the ego's strategy to maintain control, but in controlling everything, we suffocate life itself. Let me tell you about a man named Alex, brilliant, thoughtful, deeply analytical. He had dreams, big ones, to start a business, to travel the world, to write. But he never began. He was always planning. He researched markets, studied languages, outlined books, but never took step one. One day he confessed to me, "I think too much. I can't stop. I'm afraid I'll waste time, money, energy." But the irony, in trying to not waste life, he wasted it. Overthinking is a form of spiritual procrastination. It says, "I'll live tomorrow," but tomorrow never comes. Only now exists. And the clock is always ticking. There is immense pain in overthinking, pain we rarely admit. But it's not just anxiety or stress, it's the pain of unrealized potential, the ache of unlived experiences, the slow erosion of our self-trust. Every time we hesitate, every time we freeze, we send a message to ourselves, "I can't handle this." And over time, we believe it. Confidence dies. Dreams decay. What remains is a hollow, hesitant version of who we could have been. Can you feel the weight of that? Because it's not just philosophical, it's personal. Each of us has missed moments. Each of us has lost time. But here's the hope: we can choose differently. Today, now. Let's pivot toward the solution, not as a technique, but as a philosophy. The antidote to overthinking is not thinking less, but trusting more. Trusting yourself. Trusting life. Trusting that whatever happens, you will adapt, learn, survive. Stoic philosophers believed in Amor Fati, love of fate, but not just acceptance, but embrace of whatever comes. Because when you stop resisting uncertainty, you stop fearing it. And when you stop fearing it, you stop overthinking. Life is unpredictable. You can either fear that or be liberated by it. Here's an analogy. Imagine a river. You can stand on the bank, calculating the current, estimating the depth, predicting the weather. Or you can jump in. Only in the river do you feel the water, learn to swim, discover its flow. Overthinking is watching the river. Living is swimming in it. Which are you doing right now? Now, let me ask you something radical. What if failure is not the enemy? What if failure is the doorway to wisdom, to growth, to mastery? Overthinkers see failure as catastrophe, but wise thinkers see it as necessary. There is no path to greatness without missteps. The only real failure is inaction. Everything else is feedback. When we shift this mindset, overthinking loses its grip. We act, we fail, we learn, we act again. Life becomes dynamic, not static. There's also a spiritual dimension to this. Overthinking is often rooted in a lack of presence. We're stuck in the past or the future. But life only happens in the now. Eckhart Tolle called this the power of now, the only moment that truly exists. When you focus on now, you can't overthink. Try it. Right now, feel your breath. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice your body. In this moment, there's no room for regret or worry. That's the secret. Presence dissolves overthinking. And presence is a practice. Meditation, mindfulness, breathwork, these aren't just trendy. They are tools to reclaim your mind, to silence the noise, to return to yourself. But even beyond presence, there's purpose. When you have a purpose bigger than your fears, overthinking fades. Purpose aligns your thoughts, your actions, your being. Ask yourself, what do I care about more than my fear of being wrong? Find that, and you'll find your freedom. Because overthinking thrives in the absence of purpose. It fills the void. Fill that void with meaning, and the noise quiets. Here's a final story. A young woman dreamed of singing, but she was terrified. What if she failed? What if people laughed? Years passed. She sang in private, never in public. Then one day she realized, I'm going to die someday, and no one will ever hear my voice. That thought hit harder than fear. She sang that night, imperfectly, but beautifully, and she never looked back. Her lesson? Overthinking is a slow death. Risk is life. So I leave you with this. What song are you not singing? What river are you not swimming in? What decision are you postponing, waiting for certainty that will never come? The only way out is through fear, through doubt, through action. Life isn't waiting. Neither should you. Overthinking is the cage, but action is the key. Use it.